everybody out there. How are we all doing? I hope everybody's excited for today's interview. We, of course, have Jillian A. Brown today, and I already see a couple people logged in. Richard, so good to see you this evening. And Kate, so good to see you as well. Let's jump into it here. All right, and so here we are. The person of the hour. Jillian, can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm all right. Got a bit of a cough, so don't mind that, or the cough drop that's in my cheek at the moment.
That's totally fine. That's all right. It's funny. I won't be infected by you, so this is probably the best way for us to do this interview. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that at all. Awesome. Yeah, so Jillian is a Canadian documentary photographer known for taking her cameras to extremes and pushing herself to the brink to share a story and share the power of connecting to the natural world. She's been published in Sidetracked Magazine, Grip Magazine, Canoe Kayak Magazine, Paddling Magazine, Canadian Geographic, and many more. We are so happy to have you. And of course, we're going to be having you in person here at HOWL 2023, happening November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Jillian, what went through your head when we contacted you asking you about this speaking engagement?
Oh, well, immediately I was very excited and incredibly honored because you were asking me to be a keynote speaker along with John Marriott, which many of us really look up to and respect. But also, I was a little bit worried because I hadn't heard of your convention. So I wrote John right away and confirmed that you were legit. and then I also had a good connection and chat with John.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we've always tried to do when we structure our speaker program is to have really well-established people like Johnny Marriott. In the past, we've also had Melissa Grew. And then, of course, rising stars such as yourself as well. So we were just ecstatic that you said yes, that we had a good enough impression and we passed your test and you agreed to join us.
Oh, yeah, a total honor. I'm so super, super excited and looking forward to it, as is my husband, who's going to be accompanying me.
That's right. Yes, very, very much looking forward to meet you both. And then for the viewers that are watching right now, what I have loaded is Jillian's Instagram page. You can, if you go to Instagram, you can find Jillian by the handle Jillian A Brown Photography. So if you haven't followed Jillian yet, you should absolutely do so. Some super stunning, exceptional imagery. So I'm just going to have a slideshow of Jillian's photography as we chat here. And speaking of photography, can you tell me about the moment where you transitioned from being a hobbyist to this becoming your full-time profession?
Oh my goodness. Well, I knew when I got my first camera that basically from that moment forward, I was destined to be a photographer. I already loved fine arts and I was only 10 years old. So this has been a definite lifelong growth. And goal. So when I transitioned, well, I pretty much transitioned into making this a career as soon as I possibly could. So I immediately, in high school, I started doing volunteering to do photo shoots around. And then I went to a special photography school in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, called Prairie View School of Photography. And I had the opportunity to go and photograph for other university newspapers and for the Manitoba Moose and things like that, which just opened up doors, and those were all volunteer at the time. So yeah, like 2010, I definitely started getting paid for my photography. And that was pretty much when I moved out to British Columbia from Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I love that you say that because my first business was a photography business, and the way I got started was similar to you, volunteering. It's really incredible what kind of connections you form by volunteering your photography services. So yeah, I can definitely relate from a business strategy. That was a totally a good investment.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's great to get the experience, but you also make those connections. So then later on, when they have potential other gigs, you've
That's
already talked to them about it, and they already know your name.
It's yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of wisdom in the industry about don't sell yourself short, don't work for free, and all that kind of. And it's important to know when to price yourself correctly. But yeah, from my own experience too, yeah, absolutely. Like charities that I volunteered my services would then pay me later on, 2 years down the road, right? So that's such a cool way that that you got yourself started. Yeah. And we part of the reason why we wanted to to approach you as a photographer is because your backstory is very inspiring and it's very interesting. You're very open about overcoming PTSD through nature and photography. And can you tell us more about your mental health advocacy and why you're so open with your mental health journey?
Yeah, for sure. Well, as I stated, photography I knew was a passion of mine since I was 10 years old. So it's kind of always been a tool for me to overcome anything. And it's been something that I've leaned on. If I'm not doing it, then I'm usually not quite as happy as when I am.
Yeah.
But it also takes me out into nature, which is such a healing place for us. Fresh air, you're getting fitness because you're always moving. And then you slow down when you're out in nature. You don't necessarily overthink things when you're out there. There's just so many aspects to it that make it so good for us. So when I started dealing with all the mental health stuff, we'd kind of all go through phases in life dealing with. But in particular, I had left an abusive relationship after 5.5 years. And there were aspects that fortunately I had these tools. I was a photographer working, I was outdoors doing all those things at that time that helped me get through all of that. And then leaving it, I ended up homeless, living in a tent in the woods, which as much as that was scary at the time, and I was then diagnosed with PTSD while there, it was the best place I could have been to find healing because I could just completely focus on myself, but also I was completely immersed in nature. Which was amazing. And I picked back up my photography business. And then I started to write along with my photography. And that was something fairly new to me at that time. For one, I didn't have social media before that. So I've only been on social media for, 8 years now or something, which I guess is a long time now. But when I started, everyone was already far along on that.
Yeah.
I started to put some writing in with my photography as well as quotes, because I was reading quotes for mental health and for motivation for myself each day, and slowly started to open up more and more. And it was actually a sponsorship letter that I had wrote, my first ever attempt at a sponsorship letter. Didn't know what I was doing at all, and I kind of just explained my story, and I sent it to all sorts of different brands and companies, as well as some magazines, and in particular, the Canadian Women's Foundation. And rather than any sort of sponsorship, I didn't get anything like that, but a lot of them asked about publishing it, like sharing it somewhere, in particular, the Canadian Women's Foundation. And it was through that that a woman actually booked a photography session with me. I did these headshots with her. And at the end of it, sorry.
Don't worry.
I've been trying not to talk for 2 days just to be okay for this interview. At the end of our shoot, she goes to pay me, and she tells me she booked this shoot because she had read my article in the Canadian Women's Foundation about leaving an abusive relationship, and she was in that same place, and it gave her the strength and courage to leave, and she wanted to book this photo shoot with me to be able to tell me that. And so through there, through having that experience and knowing that one story, which wasn't even very well written, I don't think, it helped one person, it gives me the motivation and has made me completely know that is a passion attached to the photography, sharing my story, because if I can help one, maybe I can help one more.
Mm-hmm. That's such a cool. I just love that. that's very inspiring. That is so cool. Yeah. And speaking of you being outside and in the outdoors, you've been on some epic expeditions. To your mind, what are the top 3 epic long expeditions that you've been on?
Oh goodness. Well, definitely the paddling across the United States. That was my biggest for sure. And went through everything you could possibly imagine. 150 days, almost 7,000 kilometers paddled and hiked, 23 portages, one of which was over the Continental Divide, which is the Rocky Mountains. Yeah, like broken bones, like bug bites, every rattlesnake encounters, tornadoes, everything you could possibly imagine went on in that one. So that one was definitely the most epic. And most amazing, and a lot of life lessons learned on it. My next one would definitely be one that not a lot of people necessarily know about, but it was a 50-day expedition that was through Alaska, and then we ended up in BC, or the Yukon, and then down in BC. And I call it Trading Passions because I was actually asked to guide and photograph myself and one other person on this paddling trip. And it was supposed to be 30 days up in remote northern Alaska doing this river, and done all this research on like weather and timing for seeing caribou herds and all of this stuff, and having a great time to do mountaineering as well. And the weather was so terrible that we just paddled really, really hard for the whole time, got through it, and then traded. And he does mountaineering solo, so he taught me that, and we went and summited a bunch of mountains, and then we incorporated paddling and mountaineering to go after summiting the tallest mountain in southwestern BC. So we had to paddle 3 lakes and then mountaineer and hike that one. So that was definitely my next most epic, and one that not a lot of people know about. And then, well, the Grand Canyon was insane doing that one. It was a fairly quick trip though. And we did it in 12 days, like 300 miles. And I had never done any real big whitewater. I've paddled the Des Moines down in Quebec and Ontario. But I was asked to go and replace the other teammate 7 days before the trip started. And I was like, yeah, for sure, I'm in. They needed somebody to kind of document, but also that had a little bit of paddling abilities, and that could get along with somebody in a tandem sea kayak, also dubbed a divorce boat. And we got along great. We were totally fine. And I think that's why Jamie Sharp, who I paddled with, had invited me, because he knew that I'm one of those people that just can get through anything and deal with any kind of person. So yeah, it worked out great. And we achieved that crazy goal and survived. So those would definitely be my top 3.
Wow. And as you were speaking, I have your Instagram feed slowly scrolling down, and I did see a picture of your hand is band-aided up or something. So yeah, you said, yeah. So that must have been from that trip.
Nope, that was a different one.
That was a different one. Okay.
That was from a ridiculous expedition. I don't know a ridiculous thing I did with another person, where we flipped a 400-pound tire up 2 mountains over the course of 25 days. But my finger got cut off on the top of one of the mountains with a camp saw. Like completely off? Like yeah, so then they put it back on. It was like hanging. So they re-sewed it, put pins in and everything. They had to go in and attach nerves back together and stuff. Wow. And the day after I had surgery on it, I was back up there trying to flip the tire with one hand.
That's wild. Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about
in winter, so I had a sock on my hand.
You had a sock on your hand, right? Wow. Yeah. You've truly seen everything. That's amazing. Yeah. And so obviously you're taking pictures and you're documenting your adventures. So what's in your photography gearbox? You don't have to give away all of your secrets, but just give us a little preview of what we might find in your gearbox.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Canon shooter. Yeah, and
I am too.
I I love to poke fun at Nikon and the other brands, but truly the reason I'm a Canon shooter is because that was the first camera that I was gifted, and I'm not going to go out and, for me, I didn't find it worthwhile to switch everything over.
Yeah.
So that's why I started out with Canon, or how I started out, and why I'm still with Canon. I've also been completely really happy with all of it. Everyone's usually surprised when I say I shoot with a Canon 7D, old school. You can't even find them anymore. The cropped frame. I have 2 of them always ready to go. They're always on. One always has the 100 to 400 millimeter lens on it. And then the other one always has a wide angle lens on it. So they're always ready. So I can just grab it if I see something. I usually have a macro kit along, or a 100 millimeter along with me. I love to photograph little things as well, like snakes and spiders and stuff like that. And then I have a 70 to 200, which is just a beautiful lens. Portraits, if you're ever doing that, it's the best. It's so amazing. And if you happen to be in the scenario where you're having closer interactions with wildlife, it's a great lens for that too.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I'm familiar with that lens as well. I think I have 3 out of 4 of those lenses that you just mentioned. And yeah, no, that's so cool. And you've got a couple 7Ds. I like that, having 2 ready to go, like, because the moments go by so quickly, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And having them on, it's like a watch battery, right? So if you just leave it on, they automatically shut off for one, but it's not that draining on them to just leave them on at all times. It's just better than having to switch it on. Always have it set in the set, like a ready to go setting.
Yeah.
I usually have it set in aperture priority all the time. And then if I have this scenario where I have time to be in manual, then I'll switch it over, but I always have it ready in aperture priority.
Yeah. Yeah. High five. I also like aperture priority as well.
For wildlife, it's smart. It's just good. Or if you're doing like sports or things like that, where it's fast paced.
Yeah.
Setting your aperture at a low number is just, it's just smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just works good.
Yeah. And I love it, and I think it's so cool that you've turned photography into your life, your business. How do you maintain that very delicate balance of not tainting your passion and your hobby, and not becoming overwhelmed by the taxes and the accounting and the marketing and all those like really overwhelming things to do with running a business?
Oh goodness. I think because I don't necessarily make enough to have to worry too much about taxes with it.
Yeah.
When the stuff that I do get paid the most for, I'm on like a contract, so I don't have to deal with that. And it's under another job kind of thing. So I work at Eco Guardian out at Race Rocks Ecological Reserve, and there I'm doing wildlife research, I'm doing photography, I'm running the solar panels and the sustainability facility and all of that, and I'm solo if my husband doesn't come with me out there. And so in that regard, for one, there's not a lot of pressure put on to photograph things all the time or anything like that. So there's not this stress of like, I have to get this shot. Other than what I put on myself, it's free for me to do and create how I wish.
Yeah.
And then just kind of documenting for the research purposes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that side of it. That's the big thing for me, is just I just always make sure that it's stress-free. So even when I get hired to do weddings, I make sure that they have gone to my Instagram, which is all wildlife adventure photos. And I tell them, this is how I photograph. It's candid. Yes, of course you want posed photos. I will do that, but we'll do those like post photos for you for sure. But if there's specific ones you want, go to like Pinterest, create a little album, print off some, bring them with me or send them to me so that I have a reference of what you're wanting, for one. But just making sure that they're aware this is how I shoot. And then I go in and I don't have that stress. I may get a little bit of the stress from the wedding party or whatever it is. But really, I don't find stress in my job because I've made them aware this is my style and this is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be edited, all of that kind of thing. So I've never had any sort of issue with it. I also have lots of times where I'm not taking photos. Right now, I haven't picked up my camera in a number of months because I've had lots of other things going on and other forms of income and jobs. So it's not something I ever get tired of. As soon as I pick up the camera, I'm excited to pick up the camera.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you've figured out the right way to just manage it all so that the fire continues to burn. That's great. Sorry, a quick aside. Where can we find your wedding portfolio? I don't see any of it here.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. I keep trying to start an Instagram that's like portraits because I have done so many and I do love it, especially kids, because it's like photographing wildlife.
Right.
It's so similar.
Right.
Because that's how you get it, the beautiful moments. Just be like, okay, I'm just going to take your kid and let them run around in the woods and I'm just going to capture what they do. And you get the most beautiful, true emotions out of these kids. And most people nowadays have no idea that I do that or have done that so much. But I'm all I guess if I should make more of a point of putting it out there.
Yeah. Oh no, you don't have to. I'm also a little bit half joking. I mean, these adventure photos are way interesting over top of, say, standard bridal portraits. So, but
even if you went to my Facebook page, the Jillian A Brown Photography Facebook page.
Yeah.
If you went to photos, you would there see a lot more. That's where I was getting all of my portrait and wedding business, was on Facebook.
Cool.
And Instagram has always been my like adventure side of things.
Nice.
So there's that little tip too for people for like business wise. I've found that Facebook has been really, really good for portraits and family and wedding and that side of photography business. And Instagram is great for like brand and nature and adventure stuff.
That's a great business point right there. And it's funny how we small business owners have to manage, so many channels, right? But they all, you play to their strengths and they do different things for your business, right?
Yeah.
So super. And going back to your adventure and wildlife photography, how do you practice ethical wildlife photography?
Well, a lot of my photography is from a kayak of wildlife, often on shore. So there's not so much disruption.
Perfect.
For one, on it. So if you're on a river, you're just naturally flowing by anyways. So that works really well in being ethical and not disrupting. But I'm very much one that I go out into the field and I'll hunker down where I know there's wildlife. I'll just sit there.
Yeah.
I don't usually wear blinds. I have camo gear and stuff like that, or like very natural colors. But I like to allow wildlife to come into my area. So I'll go and be stationed somewhere. And then if moose or whatever are around and they walk near me, it's their decision and choice. They are comfortable enough with me being there. The animals know that you're there. They know that. Even if you're in a blind, they know that there's people there. It's them being comfortable enough to be as close as they feel comfortable to be. And I've done that since I was just a kid. I would be off in the woods. We were on a little island in northwestern Ontario, deer, bear, all sorts of wildlife. And I learned that if I just sat, and then they would eventually come into my space and that they were okay.
Yeah, I love hearing that, because the overarching theme of our convention is conservation and ethical wildlife photography. So just hearing about your approach to it, that's amazing, and I hope that more people take some inspiration from that. And speaking of wildlife, what are your top 3 wildlife subjects that you enjoy taking photos of the most?
Okay. Well, I love photographing bears.
Yeah.
Grizzly bears are amazing. Black bears too. I love that. I really love photographing reptiles and amphibians.
Yeah.
A lot of that reason, I think, is because they're very close, intimate encounters.
Yeah.
So you really get to experience and view that creature really beautifully. And not a lot of people, for one, take photos of those kind of things, but appreciate the beauty that are those creatures, like snakes in particular. They're such beautiful creatures, especially up close.
Yeah.
The patterns and everything like that. Yeah, so those would be another one. I it's funny, it's like a love-hate, but I really love photographing the sea lions that I get to work with out at the ecological reserve.
Yeah.
And I live on this little tiny rock that's like 200 meters, and I'm there with like 3,000 sea lions, California sea lions and Steller sea lions. And so for 2 months, that's like all I'm photographing. And it's trying to get the reason I like it them so much is because I'm forced to get really, really creative and push my photography and the way I view sea lions and that place, because there's no going anywhere else. I can't move to the other side of the sea lions because it's ocean. I'm on a little island, like, so trying to work within the little confines of the space that's respecting their space too, is really fun and gets, that's a big one. So really it's whatever animal is in the reserve, but the sea lions in particular.
Yeah, there's something absurdly comedic about you being surrounded by 3,000 sea lions. That's a hilarious image.
Yeah. It's a loud one too.
Probably. Oh goodness, that's amazing. And what do you think about our society and whether we are on track to meet our conservation goals? Do you think we're headed in the right direction with conserving our natural world right now, or should we be more aware of something, or should our society be doing something else?
I mean, I like to think that there's certain things that are changing in some way. I think the conversation around conservation open these days, whether that means there's as much change as we believe, is a different story. Paddling these remote places and going remote places, encountering remote cultures and people, is really eye-opening to how much we're being told different things than what's actually happening. Like protected areas aren't actually protected. They're like, they say they're protected, and then because there's a mine on the other side, they just plow right through them with to put a road in. Well, then what was the point in protecting it? I thought that was why it was protected. It's just there's a lot of contradiction within these things too. It's hard because there's lots, like, I wouldn't have a camera without a lot of those industries as well. So I can't also complain too much about them and what they do, because I need them to do what I love.
Right.
So I just wish they would do it in a better manner.
Yeah.
But there just isn't necessarily that technology yet.
Yeah.
So it's just it seems like all of our growth is so fast these days with technology and all of these things, but there's certain aspects that aren't so fast. We don't have flying vehicles. We still have to have a road to access places, or a plane. So we still need certain things for that. And there's still only certain amounts of money in the world and all of that side of things. So I get a lot of that. But yeah, there's a lot that I wish would change. Being out at Race Rocks and seeing the whales all the time and then seeing all the freighters going by and that kind of thing is hard and frustrating. But at least there seems to be more conversation around all of these topics. So hopefully that means that more is happening. It's a hard one. I mean, I didn't see any caribou. I saw one caribou that was sickly on that 50-day expedition when I was going up there to photograph caribou.
Yeah. And that's a bad sign, I assume.
It just shows like the changes in the global dynamics, and how it's affecting herds and migrations, and weather systems too. I mean, it rained for 45 days out of 50 in a time when there shouldn't have been really any rain.
Wow. Yeah. And I hope that the conservation conversations continue, and especially that the leaders who make all these decisions find a way to balance the economic goals with the goal of conserving, right? And not tipping the equilibrium of nature in a way that's going to be negative for everybody, right? So yeah. And what trips do you have planned coming up soon?
Some point in the near future, I'm doing a trip down in Ohio, starting in Indiana and paddling through Ohio, with a documentary crew, and we're showcasing the importance of keeping that drainage basin healthy and clean, the waterways healthy and clean, and having good environments for us as well, the mental side as well. That's one of the biggest drainage basins into Lake Erie, which is the most polluted, or one of the most polluted Great Lakes. So that is one expedition coming up. And then next year, I believe my friend and I are going to be going down to the Amazon River and doing a trip down on that, in traditional canoes, and immersed in that culture there, which is pretty cool. And then some other things. Just got on with Jackson Kayaks, along with my husband. So we're going to be doing some work with that, and doing some adventures there. So, yeah, lots. And then I go back to Race Rocks a couple times.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm always there for a month to 2 months at a time. And I always kind of count that as an expedition, because you have to work through a lot of things out there. So
it would meet the definition of an expedition. Yes. Yeah. And then of course you're visiting Whitney in November. That's November 3rd, 4th, and 5th this year. And without giving too much away, can you give us a little preview or summary of maybe what you're going to talk about?
There's always a big highlight on connecting to your passion, connecting to nature, and connecting to yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
And lots of beautiful photos and stories.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Well, we can't wait. So we're just so looking forward to having you at the show. And I'm just looking through
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And just a comment here. Richard says, I was in my kayak for 20 minutes waiting until a bird came out when it felt comfortable too. And so, yeah, there you go, back to practicing ethical wildlife photography, being aware of conservation, and all that good stuff. So, yeah, thank you, Richard, for your comment there. So, and those are actually all the questions that I had prepared for you today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for saving your voice for 48 hours for this 30-minute interview. I appreciate that so much, that you stuck through it and fought through this cold.
No problem. I'm glad it got a little bit better. So yesterday I didn't have much of a voice at all. So.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Well, I guess we got lucky then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Definitely.
All right. Well, good stuff. Well, thank you everybody for watching our live stream interview today. Again, this is Jillian A. Brown. Please check out Jillian A. Brown Photography on Instagram and also on Facebook. Jillian is one of our keynote speakers, will be coming here and giving a keynote lecture, and then, of course, participating in our interactive question and answer panel as well. So again, that's November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2023. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jillian. I know you've got a You've probably got a whole bunch of stuff to do, so we'll let you go. And then Richard here says, it's been awesome. Looking forward to HOWL. Richard's been to HOWL twice already, so this will be Richard's third HOWL. So we've definitely got a nice growing group of fans that you'll be able to meet, Jillian, and share the enthusiasm with. So
yeah, that's very exciting.
It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. All right, friends. It's howlphotocon.com. We still have tickets for sale. Please visit our website for more information, or if you want to purchase a ticket. And stay tuned to our HOWL Photocon social media channels on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube for more live streams that will be coming up. We will be interviewing a couple of our other speakers, our keynote speakers, and as well, we're going to do some other photo streams with other participants who want to show off some of their portfolio pieces based on themes, different themes that we choose. All right, everybody, you all take care. Happy spring, and we'll see you next time.